With that, let's get to the news, shall we? Guys, it was a busy week. We got a lot that we're going to be talking about on that legislative side. We've got some updates on some native communities here in Minnesota that are looking to expand into cannabis. But first, we want to give a quick update to that THC-A story. That was a big story that's been going on here for the last couple of months. I mean, it feels like way longer than that in Minnesota. But there was an update that the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, sent out an email a little bit earlier this week. In fact, just yesterday as of recording, letting people know, hey, we mean it this time. We are going to begin inspections. It says we're going to begin to examine any flower products sold during regular inspections to determine whether they are indeed hemp flower or cannabis flower. And there was a report that came out in the news today that someone went into a store and tested these products and oh man, came back 29% THC. What are the odds that this hemp product is not compliant with hemp laws when it's being sold as a THC-A flower product? Insane.
Holy smokes.
I know.
Well, thank God they're here.
Yeah, so that business owner was interviewed and sort of asked like, hey, do you know that this is illegal? And he's basically waiting for them to come tell him to stop. So exciting to see what comes in the next couple of months here in Minnesota. Shout out to that business owner, maybe. We don't want to give their name specifically, but
I'm
crazy
so curious.
time.
Yeah.
Oh,
some people welcome to fuck around and find out.
We'll link that news article in the show notes. So if you want to go read a little bit more about that, get those quotes directly from that business owner, go check that out. But yeah, definitely exciting to see what the OCM will be doing over the next couple of months here.
And so
business.
So they have the authority to embargo any product that they have probable cause to believe is being distributed in violation of the law.
Yep.
Okay. And violations may be considered in their future licensing decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you hope to have a cannabis business in the future and they come in and say, hey, this is not legal product, that could significantly harm your chances in the future of being able to be a legal license owner at some point.
Yeah, I was meeting today with a guy who plans on applying for a mezzo license. And we were talking about all of these people who they're not going to be able to comply, and a lot of them are not willing to comply right now. It's like, you're not going to get a license acting like that.
Yeah, definitely will be interesting to see.
Expect to. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they think they're too smart. But that's not smart.
But this has been the concern of responsible business owners for quite some time. This has always been the reason why they don't want to do it, is because in the long run, they want to have a license.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't risk it. If yeah. Why would you do that if you actually want to get a license?
Yeah, well, it's greed. You know, if you can sell a drug on the street that your neighbor can't sell, then you're going to be able to sell more drugs.
Well, I think in every state that has come online with legalization, there's sort of been that gray industry that popped up. I think here in Minnesota, the law is a bit more clear that it's not a gray area. It's very explicit, like not gray.
Sure.
But I think there's just enough of a shade of it that police are either not wanting to get involved or thinking they don't have the authority to get involved or whatever reason. These shops have been able to sell high THC-A flower for how many months now?
It's like Minnesota nice weed.
Exactly. Well, so more to come on that. Interesting to see where the OCM goes. Interesting to see how some of the inspections continue to go. We'll be hearing more a little bit at what to expect when you're expecting an inspection. So excited to learn more about that.
I can't wait.
Everyone who wants to get a license should do that, or who is selling hemp-derived products should show up.
We should mention we're live streaming it for everyone outside of the Twin Cities, and that's something we do with all of our events. So if you want to get into the Minnesota Cannabis College, join the live stream. It's $10.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, the big news from this week was not the OCM directly, but really was more news coming out of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. We had gotten some indication that they were going to be building a cultivation facility. We saw the ground break on that a couple months back, started to hear indications of it. Well, this week they came out with the big news of exactly how large the facility is going to be and what they plan to do with it. Guys, 50,000 square feet. That's how large this grow facility is going to be.
That's bigger than the fish in Mille Lacs.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't even the bulk cultivator license limit you to like 30,000 square feet? Though?
Absolutely. So that bulk cultivator, 30,000, mezzo is 15,000, micro is 5,000. But because Mille Lacs is on native land, they don't abide by that specific cap. They'll be having the largest grow facility in the entire state of Minnesota.
Wow.
They're going to grow some really big plants.
They're going to grow some very big plants.
They actually had like some type of agriculture conference there today, and Dr. Dabbs did a presentation at like 8
I
a.m.
saw that. How to make your own cannabis medicines. Yeah.
I bet
Dr.
that-
Weibling was there too.
Was he really? I bet that was a very popular session that Clement taught today, and I didn't realize it was in the Mille Lacs area. Amazing. You know, that's the cool thing. You know, if for any young people that are out there, the reason you go to school and you study and you get the degree the way that Clement has is that you are tapped into these really great conferences. That's a huge part of academia. And I'm glad that Clement is continuing to find ways to work with his mentor, George Weibling, who, you know, at some point we'd love to meet. He's a big reason why there's Clement and Matt Robidoux and all these people in the University of Minnesota studying plants.
Yeah, Dr. Weibling was presenting there today too.
Okay.
He's actually pretty cool.
Well, so guys, this grow facility, 1,600 pounds of cannabis every single month is what they're expecting to come out of this.
1,600 pounds.
1,600 pounds of cannabis every single month will be harvested under their plan.
They could grow 20,000 pounds in a month or in a year, essentially. That equates to just under 20,000 pounds a year.
I wonder how they're going to brand it.
Such a great question. But I think, you know, so much of that remains unanswered because they haven't really announced exactly what that plan is going to look like. What they've hinted at is that they really have no indication of opening up a specific retail front. They're not interested in selling the cannabis to consumers. They're interested in being Minnesota's largest wholesale supplier.
I love that. I think people need to understand that there is a supply chain to this industry, and it's not all about being vertically integrated.
We should note that smoking cannabis remains not allowed at Grand Casino Mille Lacs.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Bummer.
though, I worry about the cultivators because, I mean, we wouldn't have cannabis products of any type without them. But, like, when the prices plummet, like, it's a tough business.
So that's actually one of the things that they directly addressed in their press announcement is saying, we know that this price is going to drop at some point. Our goal is to get out soon enough before that happens that we can build a bridge to get ourselves to the other side of it. And I got to say, with 50,000 square feet being built today, they're going to have one of the best chances of anyone here in Minnesota.
No kidding.
Economies of scale typically wins out.
I want to see the race between Highway 35 and the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe.
Oh, God. Hey, let's organize that competition.
I think the state of Minnesota has.
But honestly, though, like, mass-produced cannabis is not the best.
Yeah, we got to give a shout out to Kayla Fearing, who called us Minnesota before someone next to her punched her in the arm and said, "You're not allowed to say that." Just kidding. Adam didn't actually punch her.
Minnesota being
Minnesota.
Oh, mids.
Yeah, we're gonna fight that, and you know, I'm interested to see where the grow facility goes. I'm excited to see Native nations sort of leading the way here in Minnesota early on.
Yeah.
Interested to see where it goes 5-10 years down the line.
I want them to win.
We'll have a very unique market because of the tribes. And that's going to be very influential in the beginning, for sure. And that may set the precedent in how this market grows.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of equity. I mean, hopefully they involve a lot of members in their community in the business so that the grassroots people can benefit, and not just the like elite in the community.
And this involves the same tribe, the Band of Ojibwe. They own the Grand Casino Hinckley as well. So they'll have Hinckley, Mille Lacs, and driving up through Mille Lacs, there's only one road. So this will be relatively easy for people to not see, but drive past, especially in the summertime as the cabin season opens up.
How much cannabis is going to be driving along that one road here?
That's interesting.
Tons.
Well, speaking of some roads that are perhaps a little bit outside the Twin Cities, should we talk about some counties that we're here to potentially name and shame and give the opportunity to correct themselves? That's the big key, is the opportunity yet to correct themselves. We've often talked about counties on here, cities on here, whatever local jurisdiction imposing prohibitions on either the selling of cannabis products or even on just the using of cannabis products. And unfortunately, 2 counties are looking at that latter category on prohibiting any sort of public consumption of cannabis, be it smoking or low-potency edible products. They don't want anyone to be able to consume cannabis outside of the home. So we're looking at Pope County. We're looking at Chisago County. We're looking at 2 different counties here in Minnesota, each not too far outside of the Twin Cities necessarily, but with this mindset, putting themselves way outside the norm of how to appropriately respond to cannabis use here in Minnesota.
Pope County is out near Morris, Minnesota, which is a ways
to
out.
the west.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
South
We know
of
someone that
Alexandria.
has a shop not too far from there.
Okay, and then Chisago County is
It's a little bit on the eastern suburbs, near like Stillwater, that area.
it's the Cambridge area, which is straight north of the cities, to the east of there, and Rush City, which has a CBD shop called the Stash, I
There you go.
believe. Yeah. So
They have a
Chisago.
prison out there too.
Oof. All right, and so I know some people out here, and they're talking about entire counties prohibiting the use of cannabis. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's dangerous.
Sounds like virtual signaling to me.
And they have some updating or upcoming meetings. March 20th, Chisago County, and April 2nd, Pope County.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting is a lot of the times when we're talking about this news, it's a reactive. Unfortunately, this is already passed. We're just hearing about it now. Fortunately, these are both upcoming. If you're listening to this in the days that this released after, you can be involved in this. If you live in Chisago County, we're going to mispronounce that every single time.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Chisago County, if you live in Pope County, really you can have an influence on your local jurisdictions by making sure that these sorts of resolutions don't go into effect. We know that this is not the appropriate way to deal with public cannabis use. We know that giving people fines or criminal punishments for consuming cannabis appropriately is really not the best direction to go on the city or county level. And yet it's disappointing to see so many here in Minnesota continue to sort of move down that path.
Yeah, it's just a hangover from the prohibitionist mindset in law enforcement, unfortunately.
That's
I mean,
right.
treating a public health issue as a criminal justice issue it's just never worked, and it's never right. It's never just.
Yeah. Could not agree more. All right. Well, so we've got a couple different bills that were introduced into the legislature. We've got some sort of updates that we're here to share. We're going to take a very short break, and then when we come on back, we're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to try a product here from our friends over at Dabbler Depot.
Yes.
So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Super excited to be talking about some of the updates here at the legislature in relation to cannabis. It's been a really busy week in terms of a lot of bills being introduced, but it's not been a busy week in terms of any hearings happening. There's been no movement on any cannabis bill, any bill related to the industry, any bill related to personal use or medical use. Really, it's just been a lot of bills being thrown into the ether and not much else. And that's really unfortunate because we're getting close to a pretty important deadline. We were just talking about before we came on the camera. And unfortunately, we, as of release of this episode, are only 11 days away from the committee deadline here in Minnesota. So this is coming out on Monday. 11 days after that, committees have to have approved a measure that's going to move forward to the House. If we don't see that approval happen, it's not going to pass this session.
That means at least the bill has to be heard in one committee and voted to advance.
Exactly.
Out of that committee.
Exactly.
To
So we,
juxtapose last year, it went through every committee.
oh yeah. Now we're seeing it go through no committees. We're seeing bills being introduced that really could have some significant impacts on individual users, on the industry, and we're not seeing any movement. So definitely, we're not here to tell people a specific political stance or political view, but we really encourage everyone to reach out to your lawmakers because this is, we need movement here at the legislature and really hope that we see something happen in the next 11 days here.
I mean, the legislators, they literally count the number of calls or emails they receive on any particular bill. And like, if 200 people contacted the legislator about an issue, that would be a big deal to them because a lot of people don't contact them.
Yeah. Especially, I think, if you're in a more rural community where maybe less people are contacting their legislators related to cannabis, your voice has a big impact. I mean, we saw that during House File 100. We've been seeing that for years prior to that having small movements in communities that maybe seem like they're not super supportive, that's really one of the places that you can make the most difference.
Yeah, little things mean a lot when a lot of people do them or enough people do them.
Yeah.
So that's a great call out because we have listeners and watchers from across the state of Minnesota. So if you are more in the outskirts areas, outside of the Twin Cities, outside of St. Paul or Minneapolis, call your legislature, email your legislator.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's ironic that a lot of times people in greater Minnesota and maybe like less densely populated areas, they may think that their voice is less influential, but it actually is disproportionately more influential because certain positions are expected more in the metro area. So to hear it from the more conservative parts, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could not agree more. All right, well, that out of the way, let's talk about some of the bills that were introduced. We do hope to see movement on this. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully we do see that soon. The first bill that we saw introduced just yesterday was a pretty big mover here in the industry, and that was like the official OCM adjustment bill that was introduced. I got my binder right over there. We're at a good 100 page. In fact, let's grab it for this discussion.
Please.
And this is being authored by Lindsay Port and Zach Stevenson.
Oh, yeah. Where have I heard those names before? I feel
They were the chief authors of House File 100.
Oh, that's right. Thanks for reminding me, Marcus. Oh, yeah. All right, well, let's talk through some of the big things that this bill introduces. Now, a lot of these aren't going to be super new to us, so we're going to sort of brush past some of the big ideas that we've already heard about. But we got some really clear specifics this week that give us a good hint at what our industry might look like. So we've already heard about the idea of temporary licenses going out for social equity applicants. Now we have a better idea of what that actually means. I think there were a lot in the industry that were asking, like, well, what actually are you allowed to do? Will you be growing? Will you be just doing sales? What does this really look like? We saw that it's going to allow you to get a license to do everything up to the point of actually doing your business. You're able to get a store. You're able to get financing. You're able to figure out how you're going to run your business, figure out a facility, and then wait for that official license to be issued a few months later. We got an indication of how many of those are going to be going out. So on that micro side, we got 100. On the meso side, we got 11. We'll have 13 cultivators, 6 manufacturers, 50 dedicated retailers, 20 wholesalers, 20 transporters, 25 testing facilities, which I think was the number that was most surprising to me, 10 event organizer licenses, and then also 10 delivery service licenses. This isn't the cap on total licenses that we'll see. This is just for that social equity early grant side. Now that we have a better picture of what that looks like, of what those limits will be, I mean, what do you guys think of this temporary license structure the state is proposing?
It's hard to say. I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I mean, there's a lot of people who already have brands within the hemp-derived space. There's hundreds of people who are getting positioned to apply for licenses. So when they hear that there's going to be a very limited number in terms of the temporary licenses, this scares a lot of people. Mm-hmm. They can't like wrap their head around the temporary part. And it's understandable. I mean, if you've dedicated a lot of time and invested money and, poured your heart into planning this, and to think that there are going to be a small number of businesses who are going to get a head start, I mean, that makes a lot of people worried, and they may feel like it's unfair. But, yeah.
I'd say the numbers are interesting to me that, as an events organizer, that there's a potential for 10 event organizer licenses for just social equity applicants, early licenses. I'd be surprised if all 10 get claimed, given what I know about the events industry.
Yeah. It makes me think, like, are these only for social equity applicants?
Yes. So these are earmarked specifically for social equity applicants to allow them to do that sort of pre-business business.
Yeah, like, are they going to have enough social equity applicants for all of these positions? And what happens if they don't?
So that's the question. If they don't, they just have unfilled licenses. If they have too many, we'll see some sort of lottery system.
And that's what I was confused. Like, I even was exchanging some emails with some OCM staff. Like, can you explain how this lottery system is supposed to work? Because I just don't like the idea of a lottery. That just doesn't seem fair at all.
Yeah, so I think what we've seen from other states is the lottery was introduced as a way to avoid potential litigation. They introduced that as a way to say, hey, if a business doesn't get a license, it's not because of X, Y, and Z that the regulators did. It's just because of the lottery. We didn't draw your name. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. And the court has been looking at that much more favorably. This isn't legal advice, so don't take it that way. But what we've seen in other states is much more of a gearing towards lotteries being a defendable practice, scoring not being so. And that's why in this, we saw that entire scoring structure, we've been teaching people for like almost a year now that 20% of the points will be social equity applicant based. We'll see all these things. That is now entirely gone. Or as soon as we see this pass, will be entirely gone and replaced with this lottery system that if you check box 1, 2, and 3, you meet the minimum requirements, you're entered into the lottery, you have just as good of a chance of anyone else.
But if you are selected in the lottery, you still have to have like a good application, right?
You have to meet those minimum qualifications. Yeah, they don't let anyone into the lottery that doesn't have like a completed application that checks all the boxes. But yeah, we'll potentially see people that throw their name into the hat that maybe don't get it round 1 and get it round 2 instead. Maybe they don't qualify for the social equity license, but do get one later on. I mean, one thing that we can throw in here is they also introduce caps for like total businesses. So we're going to see a cap on 25 of that max cultivator license, a cap of 12 on product manufacturers, a cap of 100 on retailers, and a cap of 22 on meso businesses. But something really interesting to note is that there's no cap on micro businesses. We could have, in theory, unlimited amount of micro businesses here in Minnesota.
I have so many questions.
Well, ask them. That's what we're here for.
Your middle name is Marcus Harcus.
Marcus.
Because we can walk through like what this would mean for an individual. So let's say you're someone who's a social equity applicant. You've been gearing up in your mind for, I'm going to apply for this license. This means that if the bill passes, we'll see a time this summer when you'll be able to apply for this temporary license. If you have a completed application, you check box A, B, C, you're entered into this lottery. If there's more applicants than there are licenses. If there's not, then there's no lottery. Well, yeah, maybe there is a lottery. It's just everyone gets it. It doesn't matter. Technicalities. But yeah. We'll see that lottery system, and then we'll see those licenses go out for people to be able to start up their business, be ready to have that transition to a full license when the rest of licenses go out as well.
Do we have there are definitions of social equity applicants readily available?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. So we actually did see some changes to that. So social equity applicant, as of right now, is anyone that had a conviction or has a close family member with a conviction for possession or sale of cannabis prior to May 1st, and that can be either state or federal. We have previously it was disabled military veterans. We saw a change introduced in this bill that would change it to all military veterans, regardless of your disability status. It's a resident of an area that has certain standards for poverty or disproportionate enforcement of law, and you've been there for at least 5 years. We used to see the term emerging farmer, but that's now been replaced with a farmer or aspiring farmer who faces barriers to education or employment. So just sort of clarifying what aspiring farmer means.
Yeah.
That's sort of where we're at.
I love that all military veterans. I remember there was some flack around honor or dishonorably discharged veterans in the last session. So this makes me feel better about, our relationship with veterans in the cannabis community and their ability to get into the industry.
Yeah, definitely clarifying that a lot. And I know there were a lot of questions that we were having at some of our the bill passing meetings that we were talking to the people in the community over at Grounded Gardens, all that fun. And a lot of people were asking so I'm a military veteran. I went and served my country. I'm wanting to get a license. Does this mean I get a license? And having to look at it and be like, well, no. And now, yes, at least once this passes. We keep throwing that asterisk in at the end just because we want to be very clear that this hasn't yet gone into effect. If it passes, if it's signed by Governor Walz, which he's indicated he hopes to, we'll see that then go into effect.
So, for me, for example, I'm not a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other things?
Do you have a conviction, or does a close family member have a conviction for possession or sale of cannabis? Not to put you on the spot here.
No, I don't.
Have you lived in an area for at least 5 years that's been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs?
Well, I do believe so, but that's where I'm wondering, like, how would somebody know if their zip code falls under that category?
Yeah, that's a really great question.
I have a house in North Minneapolis since,
Yeah, we've sort of been
16
waiting on the state to put out a map. They mentioned that they might be putting out one in January. The fact that it's March, things Probably not, but we'll look into that more because I agree with you that this should be something that there's pretty clear-cut definitions of. We're in this area, we've got this poverty line, whatever be it. So more to come.
It was interesting because I was talking to a guy they're gearing up to go for a mezzo license, and I definitely support them. But he was looking at me like, he said, like, you're a social equity applicant. And I'm thinking, well, I technically might not be.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's because, all throughout the push for legalization, especially the legislators, they were talking about it's imperative to end prohibition because of the racially disparate impact on, especially like black people. But there's nowhere in these social equity applicants that are explicitly trying to remedy that.
Yeah.
And it's like they're trying to land on it coincidentally by saying if you lived in an area that's disproportionately impacted, but you might have a guy who's a rich white guy living in 55411 who qualifies as a social equity applicant, And no offense to that guy, but I just think it's weird.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've been really struggling with, of like having to look at someone and say, hey, you live in Edina or wherever be it. That's the example we've been using of you had a cannabis conviction 25 years ago. Is that really continuing to impact your life? Versus like, Marcus, I'm sorry, you just don't live in an area that experiences enough poverty. You're not a social equity applicant or whatever be it. Like, I absolutely agree with you that I think they're tried to draw the bubble of what a social equity look like. I'm glad we're seeing some expansion, but I agree with you. We're I think seeing some people left out as well.
Like, I just have to say this. I have been a victim of prohibition in terms of all the fucking harassment and abuse and violence, but I don't have a criminal record. I mean, I just went to the BCA the other day and nothing. But I wouldn't be considered a social equity applicant because I haven't been arrested for this.
Yeah, well, and even if you were arrested,
and ticketed and harassed.
Basically, even if you did get arrested, if you didn't get convicted, then it's sort of, sorry. I have friends that were probably caught with a little bit more cannabis concentrates than they should have, got it taken away, and it's sort of like, well, be lucky that you didn't get a ticket that day.
I mean, I'm glad I don't have a record. I don't want a record to qualify.
No. And we shouldn't be saying like, oh man, these people with convictions. Yeah, oh man, good on you. But I do agree with you that I think we saw this bubble drawn. Maybe not everyone included in.
Yeah, I think like the outcomes are what matter. Like, I know that there's some good intentions in this, but we have to measure success based on the outcomes. So I'm curious to see who gets awarded these provisional licenses, and in the end, when it's fully open, who gets all the licenses? What's the picture going to look like?
Yeah, definitely more to come on that.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing that I wanted to flag about this bill that I think is really cool. We've talked about medical access in the past, and there being pretty limited medical access here in Minnesota. They've looked at how can we streamline that? How can we look at cannabis and say, well, there's not anything technically different between medical cannabis and adult use cannabis. This really unifies that if you're a business that you sell cannabis, you have someone on staff that has a medical cannabis retail endorsement, or they're a pharmacist, you can sell your cannabis to a registered medical patient as medical cannabis simply by getting that endorsement.
Let me hit you on rewind for
Absolutely.
like 30 seconds there.
100%.
Okay, so people understand what pharmacists are.
Yep.
Take us through that process again.
For sure. So here in Minnesota, if you go to one of our 2 medical dispensaries, you actually have to talk to someone that is a licensed pharmacist. That's part of you getting your cannabis is we just require that medical intervention. This creates this new type of certificate that allows people to become a cannabis consultant. It allows them to be able to advise people on how to medically use cannabis, not as a licensed pharmacist, but providing the same type of education, stuff like that. So as long as you have one of those 2 employees, as long as you've gotten this endorsement to sell medical cannabis, as long as you do it under the rules that are yet to be created, you can sell your cannabis as adult use cannabis.
Wow.
Or, excuse me, as medical cannabis.
Through the use of a medical cannabis retail endorsement.
Yeah. So what I love about this is this took that idea of medical cannabis, and we can go to Colorado where we see retail shops that are recreational, we see retail shops that are medical, and then we see some that are like a blend of the 2. Sometimes it's separate doorways. Sometimes it's the same business, but it's like different products. This is going to be, you can go to any adult use shop that has gotten this endorsement.
They have someone who's a medical cannabis consultant.
Exactly. They're going to sit down with you and say, does this follow the prescription that you've gotten in the past? Does this meet your condition? Will this help you in using in your life? And as long as it does, that cannabis that previously may have been on the shelf as adult use cannabis is now medical cannabis. And I just want to flag, is being bought without that 10% sales tax.
Ooh.
I was just thinking of that. I mean, I think this is great because it makes it more accessible, and hopefully it can benefit these other small businesses, retail businesses. But I mean, maybe I'm thinking too hard right now, but is there any type of burden on the business for doing these transactions that are not taxable yet?
Yeah, super great question.
They're being taxed on everything.
Yeah,
Like,
so
the
a
whole
certain
operation is
percentage of their sales have to be in that medical area. They have to do, let's pull up the specific statute of what it would look like while we're going here.
It kind of reminds me of a store, like you go in and they have a notary and you're able to get something notarized. It's almost like a notary process. You sit down, you get your stamp, you get your card, and I wonder how that will be certified. It'd be nice if the Minnesota Cannabis College could offer medical cannabis consultant certificates.
Well, and that's sort of what I was wondering, because this is that first time that we've seen a specific certification be offered by the OCM. Some states have, you have to get a certain card to be able to work as a retailer. We just don't have that here in Minnesota. They've created this separate, certificate now, but no indication of what that exact training would be required to look like.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing about it. This is pretty much brand new as of yesterday. We've seen this for the first time.
Yeah, that's why we're flipping all the way through to make sure that we get the right section here.
I think this is great because we need all of these retail stores to have some basic education about the plant so that they can help to educate the consumers.
And we need competition in the sense of, hey, if you go do it this way, you can save 10%. If we make that medical card more accessible.
More affordable, yeah.
Yeah, more affordable.
Yeah, so really they have to verify that patient is enrolled in the medical program as the medical shops do today. They have to make sure that it includes that patient-specific label with information that's patient-specific dosing. Like if you go to the shop today, it includes a little sticker on it saying Tanner, smoke 1 joint a day or whatever be it. And this includes that same type of provisions that they require. It would require someone who has that pharmacist or that certificate as a medical consultant to actually distribute that product. It requires that first time that they have some sort of consult to meet with someone to talk about what works best for them. But yeah.
Oh, so this doesn't actually get them their medical card. It allows them to be certified, or it allows them to access the medical cannabis.
Absolutely. So this doesn't make it easier for people to become a med patient. It makes med patients it provides med patients easier access to medical cannabis by basically opening up any retail shop, as you can now sell medical cannabis as long as you check these few boxes.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's been a limited number of medical cannabis dispensaries. So there's some people in greater Minnesota that live very far. So if an adult use shop opens up closer to them and gets this certification, it makes it more accessible.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I love that. Actually.
And it means that we won't be seeing, if you go to Durango, Colorado, for example, a little bit more rural out there's a couple dispensaries, but I'm pretty certain as of today, they're all medical. So unless you have that med card, you can't buy cannabis in town. This would essentially flip that as saying every single shop is going to be adult use, and then they also can be medical on top of that. They've totally removed the medical cultivator, the medical processor, and the medical retailer license. Those, if this passes, will be gone. We will just have cannabis retailers. We will just have micro businesses. We will just have shops selling cannabis that patients can go in, get advice and consult at, and that's it. I think finally recognizing that cannabis is cannabis, that we can say, hey, this is medical, we can say this is adult use, and at the end of the day, it's the same plants growing the same product. And now we get to finally see that they can be sold through that similar unified line of commerce.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Smart move.
Oh, yeah. Well, one other thing I wanted to earmark, just because I love this one. So we have that 280E subtraction here in Minnesota. The med companies can take everything that you weren't able to put towards your taxes and subtract it from your state taxes. This opened it up to all cannabis businesses. So not just the medical companies, but if you are operating here in Minnesota, you're doing cannabis business, all of your non-federal deducted taxes can now be deducted on your state taxes.
State level taxes.
Yeah, if this passes.
Yeah.
And then one other change is if you have a business and you want to move product within your company from one facility to another, under the law today, you actually need to work with a transportation company to legally move that from one place to another. This is saying as long as it's all internal from one facility to another, you can do it yourself.
That's good, because that was like an unfair burden on the businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Which are already going to struggle to have big enough margins.
How common is it to subtract 280E in other states as far as the other recreational states go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've seen it in states that are a little bit more favorable towards their industries, and then not so much in states that aren't. I think we've seen a lot of action on the federal level that hopefully will start moving some of that 280E stuff in the right direction. In fact, it's possible that we'll see federal action before this ever goes into effect. I'm not holding my breath, though, but it's possible. We could see some rescheduling there.
Yeah, well, there's a while till November. If you held your breath until then, I mean, who knows? This podcast might not work.
I mean, I don't think you could survive 10 minutes.
But guys, the State of the Union is strong. Can we reform? It doesn't matter. We'll be back there.
Keep America stoned.
Well, we got a couple other bills that we want to quick shout out before we head to another break here. We've got SF 4538 introduced by our buddy John Hoffman, someone that we've known for a while. This would restrict people's ability to use cannabis on state lands. Actually, here in Minnesota today, if you go to a state park, the state DNR doesn't have the authority to tell you can't smoke cannabis there. This is sort of hoping to move that in the right direction of saying, hey, maybe you can smoke cannabis, but just over there. Maybe don't smoke at your campsite or whatever the rules be. In fact, if you wanted to go and consume alcohol in a state park today, there are rules around that. I think it's reasonable to say there can be rules around cannabis as well. This is sort of bringing some of that together.
Okay.
We have no House version yet, so we'll see if that continues to move forward, but at least we do have that Senate version starting to trickle in that direction.
So this is sort of the golden age of smoking cannabis inside of state parks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So should we hold an event? No. We got another bill, House File 4629. This is a really interesting one that we're going to have to get into on another week as we continue to see it evolve and progress. But it essentially creates a mechanism for non-intoxicating cannabinoid limits to be created post the bill passing. So we'll have these limits on CBG, CBC, CBN that will be written into the bill. This will allow there to be additional limits sort of raised in the future. It also allows for cannabis to be tested at a wide variety of labs, not just cannabis testing facilities. It allows for a mechanism for measuring that total THC, adding that THC officially into it. And then also, one thing that I think is interesting is it allows for low-potency hemp vapes. So we could potentially see, like at liquor stores, gas stations, wherever be it, vaporizers sold that are perhaps maybe, I don't know, like a 250 milliliter gas, so a little like quarter-gram vape pen. It could include up to 100 milligrams of THC. Maybe it would also have 100 milligrams of CBD, maybe some CBG, CBN, terps all mixed in there.
Man, that's bringing me back a couple of years.
Yeah, and you'd be able to go to like Holiday and legally buy that product.
That would be a boom for the hemp-derived industry.
Oh, yeah.
What, a quarter-gram cart?
So legally, it can be a little bit higher than that. It's just the limits around THC servings and CBD servings does limit, like, officially how high that can go. But, I mean, think about it this way. Sort of like how you can go to a low-potency hemp shop today and buy an edible product that maybe is a little bit on the potency side, but it's much more widely available. This would sort of be like you can go to a bar or restaurant and they can sell smokable cannabis products at the bar.
I like it. But
they're just slightly smaller in the amount and serving.
And if they have CBC, CBN, CBG, that's a nice, well-rounded feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a outrageous product. That's a balanced product is essentially what I'm seeing on paper here.
Oh, yeah. Well, one more before we go to a break. We've got House File 4635. We also have a Senate version introduced by a bunch of Republicans and then our buddy, Representative John Hoyt, that would actually create a criminal penalty for those under the age of 21 from possessing and using cannabis. As of today, they're not allowed to do it. They can get it taken away, but it's not like officially illegal. This would actually make it a misdemeanor, meaning we could see those under the age of 21 sentenced to 90 days in prison or a $1,000 fine just for possessing or using cannabis. Guys, in just like one word, what are your thoughts on that?
That's weird.
Evil. Why the fuck do you want to criminalize young adults? I mean, these people are like baby adults. They're pretty much kids. Why do you want to criminalize kids?
I didn't go to jail when I got caught with alcohol under 21.
No, I just got like a minor ticket allegedly. And, you know, I think it's interesting to see us move in that direction of criminalization. Hopefully, if we see bills get a hearing, it's not this one.
And kill that bill and replace that rep.
Yeah.
I mean, the views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of the Minnesota Cannabis College.
Don't worry, we read that all at the end. We got it.
Okay.
All right, well, guys, I want to sample some cannabis products. How about you?
Let's do it.
Let's take a very, very short break, and then we're going to come on back and try some new products from our buddies here at the Dabbler Depot.
All right. Yeah, that's fucking dumb.